In this video, we're going over the steps you need to take in order to pass your real estate exam on the first try. Hey there, I'm Amanda. If this is your first time to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button and tapping that bell for notifications so that you'll be the first to know when a new video is uploaded each and every week. I am a broker, and therefore I have taken both salesperson exam and a broker exam over the years. I've also been licensed in multiple states at different times throughout my real estate career, and I've always passed on the very first try. And today I'm going to share with you the exact steps that I follow to be able to pass the first time taking the exam. Before we dive into it, let's talk about the exam itself. The Virginia state portion of the exam is 60 questions, and when you're taking the exam, initially you're going to be taking both your state and national portion, so you will have 150 minutes to complete both portions of the exam. If you haven't bought your course materials yet, that is the very first step. Think about how you learn the best. So if you're like me, you want to do things online. I get distracted in classrooms. I can't focus and it's completely boring to me. So I opted for the online route every single time. It really depends on what works for you though. So if you haven't purchased the course, be sure to think a little bit about how you learn the best and then purchase whatever matches that. So if you want the classroom, go ahead and take the classroom. There's no right or wrong. It depends on what you would like to do and how you learn the best. Once you've purchased your course, the next step that you need to do is schedule your exam. And I know you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I still have to study for this exam to take it. And I get that. But what you need to do is give yourself a reasonable amount of time, and that's going to vary for everyone depending on what your other commitments are. But whatever is reasonable for you, average I would say is about 90 days to study, and go ahead and schedule that exam appointment. And the reason for that is it gives you a deadline to work towards. If you don't have any cutoff date, end date, schedule to follow, you are going to end up cramming as you get closer and closer to the exam, and that is not going to set you up for success. And it's also going to be super stressful because you're trying to cram all this information in to pass the test. So go ahead, schedule your exam however far out you feel you need to study and get that date on the calendar. This one might shock you and you might judge me as well, but that's okay. I do not recommend reading every single piece of material that is in the real estate course. I certainly did not do it ever, none of the times. What I recommend is skim it first, and then my next tip is to focus on the chapter summaries. There's a ton of information to take in, but not all of it, of course, is going to be on the exam. So if you're reading every single word, it's going to take you probably months and months to get through the material. And by the time you've gotten through it, you're not going to remember what you read initially. So take it in from a broad perspective first. Skim it, save yourself the time and the headache of reading every single word. And then from there, move on to the chapter summaries and actually study those and thoroughly read every single one of those, because the summaries are designed, and it doesn't matter which course you're taking, whoever you choose to get your course material from, they have chapter summaries, and that extracts the most pertinent information, and that's really what you want to retain to prepare for your exam. When you are studying, pay close attention to definitions. This is definitely going to be on the exam. There are a lot of definitions that they put on the exam that you are going to need to know, and you really need to know them exactly what they mean, because some of them are quite similar with the difference of maybe just 2 to 3 words. And that's going to be very important that you know one from the other, so that when you're reading your exam questions, you know exactly what the answer is and you're not getting tripped up because a couple words were similar and you're unsure if it's, answer A or answer C. While you are studying, consider using flashcards or digital flashcards, whatever you're most comfortable with, so that you can have the word that you need to define, and then the definition either when you click the mouse and it flips over, or if you're using manual flashcards like I did, then you flip them over and you can quickly study. And that solves two problems. One, it gets you to memorize the actual definitions, and that will greatly help you on the exam when you're actually taking it. And two, you can do those flashcards anywhere. You could literally be waiting for an appointment and studying your flashcards, or you could wake up in the morning and study your flashcards. It's not that you have to sit down and do it, 2-3 hours at a time. Read your chapter summaries first. That's where you're going to invest a lot of your time. And then as you're reading through the summaries, that's when you can be making your flashcards or using digital flashcards that are already online. There are some topics that I will absolutely guarantee you will be questions on your exam. Focus on agency, focus on the do not call registry, focus a little bit on math. Don't get overwhelmed on that. I'll include a helpful video up here if you're a little stressed out about the math. Focus on zoning laws and focus on fair housing. Every single one of those, I guarantee you, will be questions that are incorporated into your exam, and you want to know those up one side and down the other. Take as many practice exams as you possibly can. Once I got through the initial studying of the chapter summaries, this is where I focus my time more than anything else. The reason for it is the practice exams will help you start to get used to how these questions are worded. They try to trick us. They do not make it easy because they add a bunch of extra jargon into the question that really tries to trip you up. And then there are always I'm going to say 1 to 2 answers. Normally you can eliminate 2 from the multiple choice, but there are normally 2 answers that, unless you really know your stuff, you're going to be going back and forth of, ooh, is it this or is it that? These practice questions, some of them you will see as you're reading and taking your exam, oh, I've already read this question, or at least something similar to it in the practice exams. So it really gets your brain thinking how these tests are written, and it is a big factor in being able to pass your exam on the very first try. The day of your exam, as soon as you sit down in your little cubby in the testing center, you will have a piece of scratch paper. On that scratch paper, as soon as you sit down, before you do anything else, logging into the exam, anything, sit down, grab that scratch paper, and write out any formulas, acronyms, or tricks that you have memorized in order to help you on the exam. So there could be math formulas. It's really whatever you decide that you need help with. For me, I use the T trick for math, and then I also use a lot of acronyms to help me remember the different formulas for calculating, price per square foot, debt to income ratio, any of the equations that come along with real estate. And the reason that I do that is then it takes less brain power when you're going through the test, because your brain gets tired. You're there for a while and you're thoroughly reading these questions. So help your brain out a little bit and then just write everything down so that when you get to these questions that require a formula or one of your tricks that you've memorized, all you have to do is look at your scratch paper. One more thing to do before you actually start taking your real estate exam, remind yourself no one cares how many times you have to take this exam to pass it. There are so many hugely successful, top producing agents who they failed the exam 1, 2, maybe more times than that. Take that pressure off of yourself. A lot of us, myself included, are not good test takers. It's stressful. You're sitting there, you've got a timer, you're in this little pod at the testing center, and all that pressure seeps in. Take it off of yourself. It doesn't make a difference if you pass the exam on your first time or your 20th time. As long as you pass at some point and you don't give up, you win. So don't worry about that, and just remind yourself before you actually start taking your exam that you are not under any pressure to pass your first time. Once you start taking your test, my strategy with every single question is I read the question first and I do not look at the multiple choice answers. Because these questions, as I mentioned earlier, they try to trick you. They're not written in a concise way. So I like to read the question and then I ask myself to put it into my own words so that I understand it in my own way of learning first. I'll ask myself the question and then I'll ask myself, do I know the answer? And if I already know the answer, then I will then look at the multiple choice, pick that answer, and move on to the next one. I think that it can add confusion and make you question yourself more if you read the question and you look at all the answers and you think you know it, but then, oh, here's this other one that, oh, that maybe that could be the answer. Read the question first, put it into your own words, say it back to yourself, see if you know the answer. And then my next tip, if you don't know the answer, these exams have the option to just mark a question. You don't have to answer it, you just mark it. Go through the entire exam, both state and national, and then go back through the questions that you've marked that you were unsure of. And I do that multiple times. So my first run through, I'll go through the questions I marked, try to answer some more. And if I still don't know it, I'll leave them marked. So maybe I had 10 or 15 marked. First time I go through it, maybe I cut it down to 5 or 7, and I keep doing that. That way, I'm eliminating questions as I go, and I'm not sitting there wasting time staring at a screen when I don't know the answer. There really is plenty of time to take the exam. I've always had time left over, but it is time, so you have to keep in mind that you're on a schedule and you don't want to spend 10 minutes looking at a question that maybe you just don't know the answer to when you could keep rolling through all of the other questions and then come back to it. That leads me to my next tip, and that is whatever you do, do not go back and change your answers. It has been proven that the first answer that you think is correct to a question is typically the correct answer. Don't sift back through and go, oh, maybe it could be this, let me change it. That will definitely be detrimental to your success, and I do not recommend that approach. Answer what you can as quickly as you can initially, then work back through the questions that you marked. Don't go back and change anything. I am so excited for all of you who are working on passing your real estate exam. This is such a rewarding career, and bottom line, you've got this. You can absolutely do this. Take a deep breath, dive in, study, and go in there knowing that you know the material, you're confident, and you're going to pass your exam. Thanks for tuning in. If you all have any questions, as always, drop a comment below, or you can always message me on Instagram. You'll find me at Amanda S. Davidson. Until next time, take care.